As we heard in the news, French voters go to the polls today for the first round of the snap parliamentary election. President Macron called after his party had a terrible drubbing in the European elections earlier this month. Candidates who get less than 12.5% of the vote today will be eliminated from the second round next weekend. And at the moment, the polls are pointing to Marine Le Pen's National Rally, the National Front as it used to be, coming out top. Nabila Ramdani is a French Muslim commentator and the author of France, How to Repair a Broken Republic. Good morning.
Good morning, Edward.
The National Rally is nationalist. It's unashamedly anti-immigration. To what extent, in your judgment, does that shade into being anti-Muslim?
Well, I think by definition, the National Rally is a party that was expressly set up in 1972 to express grievance at the loss of Algeria, a Muslim-majority country that the French exploited as colonizers from 1830 until 1962. The Algerian War of Independence was a notoriously savage one, and there are plenty of people in France who still regret that France lost, and they now associate a vast Algerian Muslim diaspora with violent resistance, and are frankly quite happy to add all other Muslims who hail from North Africa, the Middle East, and indeed other parts of the African continent onto their hate lists. And beyond a well-recorded history of Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, and other forms of racism, the National Rally has in recent days been talking about ending the age-old rights of people born in France to foreign parents to be granted French nationality, something that not even the Vichy government was able to achieve while collaborating with the Nazis. The National Rally has also been talking about discriminating against dual nationals, such as French Algerians, of which there are millions, and indeed of banning the headscarf in public spaces. And overall, it has to be said that the National Rally social policy can be summed up by the phrase national preference, which is the euphemism used in the party's policy statement for what is effectively discriminatory, not to say racist proposals.
Well, you mentioned the headscarf. What other, if Jordan Bardella, who will become Prime Minister for the rally, if indeed he secures an absolute majority, if that happens, what other actual legislative steps would you expect to see that worry you?
Well, for a start, Jordan Bardella and indeed Marine Le Pen have consistently made it clear that they would push the laïcité, the secularism law in France to its extreme and ban the headscarf in every public sphere, including on the streets. Now, one would imagine that National Rally policies, such as the ones I've mentioned, ones that change at the drop of a hat, it has to be said, will be even more discriminatory if they do actually win an absolute majority in the National Assembly in a week's time and then are able to form a government. And their would-be Prime Minister, Jordan Bardella, has displayed horrific prejudice against Muslims in his short public life. He's only 28. And I think that making him Prime Minister will embolden him enormously. He will become a very dangerous figure as far as French Muslims are concerned.
Okay, can I turn to another area, which is that there's always been a strong link between the right and Catholic conservative social values in France. Are those still there in the current National Rally Party, or are they really restricted more to the more marginal, I think it's called the Reconquête, the reconquering party of Éric Zemmour?
Well, Roman Catholicism has, of course, always been a huge force in French public life, and a majority of the country identifies as nominally Catholic, and so much of the history and indeed the culture of the country is wrapped up in Rome, and conservatives, including Charles de Gaulle himself, have always been devout Catholics. What has changed, however, is some Catholics turning to extreme right-wing ideas in a way that Charles de Gaulle would never have done. Great replacement theory is a classic example of a trope adopted by some Catholics on the extreme right, and it is the theory that Muslims are outbreeding traditional Christians and so will one day take over France by strength of numbers alone. It is an extremely dishonest, malicious theory, but it is certainly just the kind we've heard repeatedly on media outlets owned by Vincent Bolloré, who's frequently referred to as France's Rupert Murdoch. Somebody like Éric Zemmour, for example, who has never stopped spreading collective guilt against Muslims, and he shot to prominence through being a kind of shock jock on Bolloré's CNews TV channel, while also writing regular columns in august newspapers such as Le Figaro. It has to be said that he has been convicted a number of times for inciting racial and religious hatred, sometimes using those very media platforms. Now, Zemmour is not a Catholic, but he's extremely popular with the Catholic right, as I found out while attending his meetings and indeed meeting him on a number of occasions.
Nabila Ramdani, thank you very much indeed for that analysis of what's happening in France.